Welcome to another episode of The Process, where we get real, raw, and grounded. As you can see, we have a guest today, and she doesn't have a beard. Okay, great, wonderful. Now, this is Natassa Gelinas. She's a good friend of mine. I've known her for a few years. We met in the sales space. And today we are going to talk about NLP. Right. And the N does not stand for notorious, although a lot of people would like it to be. All right. Now, this was spawned with a post that I made the other day on my Facebook, where I asked about, people's thoughts on NLP, love it, hate it, and why. And so what ended up happening, there was a lot of people that were chiming in, just, throwing shade on it. And I'm going, interesting. Right. And Natassa, she has some expertise. I would say more than some. She has expertise in NLP, and she came in to, continue the discussion. And so we thought it would be a good idea to, bring that here so we can get clarity on what NLP is about. So my first introduction to it was about 15 years ago. I was hanging out with a friend, and he was telling me about Richard Bandler and the case where he was accused of murder and this and that and blah 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 blah. And so because of that, it's had a negative connotation. We'll get into that later. Right now, I want to know more about our guest, what her past, what her origin story, and what led her to NLP. So, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Natassa Gelinas, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks. Yeah, thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here. And I'm kind of disappointed right now that I don't have a beard, but anyway.
You can borrow mine. Here you go.
So yeah, I'm really honored to be here because NLP and to talk about NLP because as I chimed in on that Facebook post, it's because it's really close to my heart because I started with NLP about 6 years ago with my coach, and it completely changed my life, like totally changed my life in the sense that I had been doing therapy with like psychologists, like typical talk therapy since the age of 8 years old. Why is that? That's because I was actually in foster care at 8 years old, like super trauma, mom's into drugs, prostitution, all of that. So as soon as social services got involved, I started seeing psychologists. And I got a lot of really good theory and things from those 10 years of being in the social services and, being a child of the government. And I saw psychologists and educators regularly. I went through kind of like a rehab even with like all of that. So I know that and I understand that, and it was useful. I did come out of that being a functional 18-year-old, which for someone from my background is actually quite impressive. And then when I was in my early 20s, I wanted to be an entrepreneur and be successful, and I just wasn't. It just wasn't happening. It was just like a lot of getting anxiety attacks, a lot of panic, like crying in front of my computer because I can't figure things out, drinking all the time, not being able to wake up, not being able to have a routine. And I hired a coach, and she uses NLP as one of the primary modalities. And the understanding I had of myself, of my nervous system, the transformation that I was able to go through, where I am today, being a digital nomad. I'm successful in my career in sales. I own land in Mexico. I've been to like 36 different countries. I've got beautiful friends all over the world, like Marco, for example. So the transformation has been a lot about NLP, and I dedicated myself to studying it. So yeah, I don't know from here. What do you think is next?
Yeah. So what I think, I mean, there's so many interesting facets to your story and what NLP's done for you. At some point, you end up in India in your life, right? And you spent quite a few years in India learning about, yoga, Hinduism, and things like that. And was that around the same time that you got introduced to NLP?
Yes, that's actually that's really great that you bring that up because I did a little bit of NLP before going to India with my coach without even knowing it's NLP. She was just saying things to me, and I was just like, it's just amazing and it's working. And then when I got to India, I stayed there actually for 3.5 years. I got there just before COVID broke out. And I actually did my NLP practitioner studies while in India. And what's really interesting is that I studied yoga, and because I studied in India, I didn't just understand how to put my foot in my head. I actually got to learn about yogic philosophy, about Sanatan Dharma, about like the Vedas and all of this. And what's really interesting is that when I then did my NLP course, I learned about NLP and I looked at my yoga philosophy and I was like, oh shit, they're the same thing. They're exactly the same thing, except the NLP has really codified, like really like to the T, like that very linear, like structured, like static masculine energy in the NLP is there, made by these two therapists where they've really codified everything. This is how the mind is seeing and processing reality through the senses in this codified way with meta programs and Whereas yoga is a little bit more the general theory of, how we create reality, which they call Maya, inside of our mind, and then there's the real reality. NLP says the same thing. You've got reality and then you've got your mind movie, which isn't quite reality. So they're both saying the exact same thing. And then really interesting, my last year in India, I did a Buddhist retreat. So from the Mahayana tradition, Tibetan Buddhism, I did that in Dharamkot. And there also, when the monk was explaining Buddhist philosophy, and Buddhism does have a tendency to be a little bit more psychological, analytical. And because I already had the background in NLP, I understood everything right away of like what he was explaining, and then some a little bit more. Obviously, Buddhism's a little bit deeper. But then again, these three things, like for me, NLP, Buddhism, and yogic philosophy are intimately related. They're saying the same thing, just from different perspectives.
Mhm. So let me chime in there because out of curiosity, because again, I'm trying to like brush up on NLP and understand what it is and how it works. And I have some basic core understanding of it. Um, so let's just so when you say like it's very similar to those two things, or those three things are very similar. What do you think the core philosophies are that are the same that have impacted you? Because you said it like obviously helped with your life versus traditional therapy or whatever uh traditional paths people take. So what was it that made the difference, and what's similar about it to you?
100%. I love that question. And to really sum it up into one word is that all three of these are going from a space of non-duality.
Mm.
And a lot of times in NLP, this isn't something that's very obvious for people, but it is a very non-dual perception of the mind. Okay, what is non-duality? What am I saying? So non-duality is the coming out of the duality. So from like a yogic perspective, for example, you've got consciousness and you've got matter. And then when consciousness and matter become one, when you really become connected with you and God, yoga, union, whatever, non-duality, from a yogic perspective. From the Buddhist perspective, the root of all suffering is ignorance. And that ignorance, I think, is not just ignorant of fact, but I think it's ignorance of the overarching fact that the way you are perceiving reality is not actually reality. Because every single time that something is happening and that you are taking in that information through your senses, you are making meaning of it, you are understanding it in the way that you have been programmed through your linguistics and through your neurology to understand reality. And therefore, the way you are understanding reality is not the way reality is actually happening. And that's exactly what all three of these are saying. So that's what I find really the core philosophy is that basically we're all living in our own realities and it's all a lie. The only thing that is really true is that nothing is true. So therefore everything's true, non-duality. I don't know.
So
I'm
I
sticking
love
at
that.
10. How deep are we?
No, you're actually really good at explaining things, which I need to like pick up on because I'm terrible at communicating ironically as a sales guy. Um, or making big ideas simple. But so I like how you said that most of our perceptions are obviously independent of each other and most of them are a lie. And I was doing some research the other day on like the mind and how it works and how it communicates with the prefrontal cortex and all the different components and everything. And how basically the brain is just a huge goal seeking organism. Like it's literally just designed to orient us toward a goal and give us reward systems and responses and stimuli to get toward that goal. So do you think that like some of the are you a Bob Proctor fan? Have you listened to any Bob Proctor stuff? So he
I
talks a
know.
lot about like paradigms and like how our paradigm is kind of our perception of reality, which reminded me of what you were talking about. Um, do you feel like it's not necessarily that we're living a lie, but it's like we're optimizing for something that may no longer serve us, or for we're coping with kind of a version of reality toward a goal that maybe is ill-defined, or like you said, ignorance is the root of all suffering, right? So maybe we think that in our pursuit of happiness or finding homeostasis, that goal is the right goal. But then as we develop and mature, we realize, oh shit, I was like actually like way off course and I should have been focusing here. And that's where all that, does that make sense? Or am I just
Yeah,
making it more
and
confusing?
no, no, no. I love what you're saying because I think that we're going really to the core of this NLP and of this Buddhism and of this yoga right away in like the first 10 minutes here. And I love this for people that are listening too. The ignorance that I'm speaking of and the lie that I'm speaking of, that like you're saying, it's not that it's a lie in the sense that it's bad, it's just that it's not a universal truth. So Buddhism gives us the two perspectives of truths, as they say, of the relative truth and the universal truth. And so when I say that we're living our lie inside of our minds, it's because we're living our relative truth, because it's our truth relative to us, but it's not necessarily the truth. That's why everyone is allowed to have their own truths, right? And what you say about, you said, oh, the brain is looking for the goal, the mind is going for a goal, going for a goal. And then you said, here, our pursuit of happiness. And from a Buddhist perspective, I just want to sit here and be laughing Buddha. Pursuit of happiness in itself is already very ignorant, because you cannot pursue something which is only a state which you have inside of you, accessible to you in every single moment. Pursuing something like happiness is in itself already bound to fail, because you cannot pursue something that is in every moment you can only access. And so when we're talking about this subject here and we're talking about the lie, that's the lie that your mind is telling you that I need to make $10,000 a month as a salesperson, and I need to be the top salesperson, and I need to be this next Jeremy Miner, and I need to be the next Bob Proctor, and then I'll be happy. And that is a total load of bull crap, because you have access to that right now. And NLP, what yoga and Buddhism doesn't do, NLP very precisely teaches us how to access states, how to understand states, and we can learn to model other people's states, remember states, or conjure them up through imagination. And therefore, we become in control of our states. NLP gives us a step-by-step. Yoga says, you want to get a state? Go do an asana, go do a meditation, go do karma yoga. You want to change your state? Do one of these things. But NLP really brings it down to, how do you process reality? Are you more of someone that talks to yourself? Are you more visual? Are you more auditory? If you want to feel happy and you're auditory, listen to something that triggers that state of happiness. Boom, that's it. That's
Right.
what it is. It's all about a state.
Okay, not to hijack the interview, but I'm actually genuinely curious because I was like asking myself these questions and going down the rabbit hole the other day. So, okay. So I did get to the part of NLP where you conjure up states, and they gave this example in the book of like you can create a circle in your mind and then like have these feelings that are like, whatever feeling you want, positive, relaxed, when you felt accomplished in work. And then when you step inside of that circle, now you feel that way and you can kind of visualize that before you go on stage or whatever. Kind of similar to what you're talking about. Um,
Mhm.
do you feel like there's an aspect of that, and this is just my ignorance or curiosity, do you feel like there's an aspect of that that could be seen as personal, like self-delusion, in the sense that I did research the other day because I deal with depression, and they said depression, we don't really know what it is, but a lot of the theories are that basically it's our body signaling to us that this state that we're in is not optimized. Like, you got to get out of this, you got to change, you got to do something different, you can't be here because this isn't good for you. So do you feel like if you were to create a state that's optimized, that it could cause you to not fully actualize as a human being, if that makes sense, because you're kind of telling yourself that things are this way when in reality maybe the situation you're in or the path you're on is actually detrimental, if that makes sense? Or am I mixing things, or what do you think about that?
I think I understand your question. I just want to feed it back to you to make sure. I think what you're questioning here is how dangerous is it to just be like, oh, I can choose my reality and I can choose my state, and then be, like you said, eating McDonald's every day and wasting away your life. For example, I'm going to go with, like a really typical thing. And then you just being in your mind like, oh, look at me. I'm feeling in a state of happiness. This is great. Like, is that kind of what you're talking about?
Yeah, exactly. Or you're in a, toxic relationship and you're like, no, this, whatever, gaslighting yourself.
Just
And
change
so
your state, bro.
yeah, like what,
Yeah.
how do you, because that's where my ignorance stops, is like, how do I differentiate the two, or is there a difference? And
Right.
maybe
And
interesting.
yeah, and this is where I come back to the Buddhist principle of the relative truth and the universal truth, right? Like, and the universal truth often is a lot of, um, I don't want to get too much into these, but there's actually one of the beautiful teachers, actually not directly with NLP, but closely linked in the same kind of area of psychology, has the quadrants of reality. So there's four perspectives of reality, the first person, third person, second person, and fourth person, right? And so the universal truth is like that third person, right? Just like facts. You could even say like karma, right? Like cause and consequence directly, right? If I eat McDonald's every single day, at one point the liver is going to be fatty. Like
Yeah.
it's not about beliefs, it's not about states, it's not about anything, it's just a fact. It's just really like just science. It's just this is how the 3D reality that we live in works. And so it's the same thing with like you're saying, to not be delusional. So from a philosophical point of view, if someone were to say to me, I really want to live my life eating McDonald's every single day, I feel like the fullest potential that is available to me and where I find the most joy and I feel the most excited and I wouldn't want to do anything else in my life other than eat junk food, then friggin' hey man, go and do it, right? But the possibility of someone saying that is so slim because that person actually, if someone were to question them, if they were to question themselves, what is it that I get from junk food? I get a feeling of comfort. My nervous system gets regulated. I'm comforting myself with food. What do I really want? I want to be comforted. Then they'd face that real truth of theirs that they're looking for comfort. They're looking for, whatever nervous system regulation. So it is easy to be delusional, and it's easy to be delusional with every spiritual path and every philosophical path. And it's I like to be delusional sometimes. I find it funny. My friend was just like a little fun fact about spirituality being delusional. I was trying to get my SIM card in Brazil, and you need to have like a local like ID number. And my friend told me, helped me. And the lady on the phone was like, "Are you sure this is for you?" And then my friends looked at me, she's like, "Yeah." And then as soon as she hung up, I was like, well, from a non-dual perspective, we're all one person, so it was for you. Right? So we can use every concept to be delusional, but we can't be in the universal truth without understanding the relative truth. That is the non-duality, is being able to hold two contradictory truths at the same time and being able to understand which one of these in application is more useful in this moment. So I don't know, did that kind of tangent too much, or does that kind of answer what you were thinking about?
No, I feel so bad because Marco usually provides better insights than I do, and I'm
No,
hijacking
no,
the
no.
whole
I'm gonna
thing.
say we can tangent as
But
much as we want. That's the whole point. I mean, this show we go down rabbit holes all the time. That's no big deal. The thing that came up for me is that concept of spiritual bypassing that a lot of people, and you can call it also personal development bypassing, right? It doesn't, because I see personal development and spirituality just, parallel paths, really the same, just different names. And there's a lot of times where, you may have, okay, so here's a good one, and I think I've brought it up before in the past. Everyone knows David Goggins, right? Everybody knows about David Goggins. Okay, great. Stay hard. Okay, cool. Now, he's going to school to become a medic, right? A paramedic, right? He's going to be an EMT. And I have a buddy who's also training to be an EMT. And, all the sales guys, especially all the sales bros, they love to post David Goggins stuff, right? They just love, love, love to somehow equate the sales journey as that of a Navy SEAL, which I'm like, get the fuck out of here, dude. Like, I'm ex-military. I wasn't a SEAL, just infantry, not as badass as those guys, but I'm like, Sales is not military training by any stretch of the fucking mind, but these sales bros want to do that. I'm like, okay, cool, whatever floats your boat, buddy. Anyways, so going back to Goggins, going back to, this idea of bypassing, right? Goggins is idolized because of his mindset, and rightly so. The man has an amazing mental and intestinal fortitude like no other. I would say even to a fault, even to a fault. Right? I mean, he's had to have surgeries and things like that because he just pushes the envelope over and over and over again. And it goes beyond sustainability. I love the idea of having a sustainable system for my life, especially as I get more gray in the beard. Notice I didn't say older. So and so here's the joke. Here's the punchline. Is that in relation to this whole idea of bypassing, right? So Goggins as an EMT, and some guy's having a heart attack, and he's on the scene, and he's giving the guy CPR, right? He's giving the guy CPR, and the medics are like, David, back up because we got to hit him with the, defibrillators and give him some adrenaline or whatever they're going to give him. And he's like telling them, you back the fuck up. It's not a weak mindset. And so, like, and David Goggins got mad at endurance. Like, that guy will go forever, and you can only give CPR for so long. Cut to 24 hours later, and he's just like, stay hard, motherfucker, stay hard. And the guy's heart is to mush, right? That was the gag that me and my buddy were coming up with, right?
Guacamole.
Guacamole heart, right? I have a guacamole heart. Tengo el corazón de guacamole. Perdón. You go to a Mexican restaurant, you're like, hey, can I get a bowl of guacamole heart a la David Goggins? Thanks. And so,
Oh boy, we got him to break.
because the thing is this,
We
dude.
got him to break about guacamole.
Oh, dude. Because the thing is this, like, it's, uh, and I think everyone here can agree, and I think a lot of the people who like the show, who chime into the show, we all want to be better in our lives. We all want to have better lives. We all want to have more happiness. And like Natasha was pointing out, that's within us. That is within us. And I've mentioned it before. Um, you know, Michael Singer's work, how much that's influenced me. The stuff that Natasha's done with the yoga, Buddhism, and NLP, all similar philosophies. Just the names have changed in the times, and just all these little things. And ultimately, like, I think my grander point is this, and you brought it up. It's like if I do have some like serious issues that need to get addressed, it's probably best that I just don't sweep it under the rug and not address that shit. It's kind of like the Ram Dass was talking about a story where, he's like, yeah, when I was in India, man, I was so high. I was just, all enlightened and stuff. And then when I came back home, I couldn't even deal with all these people. And then he's like, was I really enlightened? And it's just like, yeah, exactly. That's the thing. We think we're so developed. I've done all this personal, development training and this and that and fucking blah, 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 blah. But the moment you're like stuck in traffic, the moment you go back home and deal with family, it's like boom, boom, boom. And you're like, I gotta get away from these people. I gotta get out. All right, I don't even know what the point was anymore. That is, I think I just wanted to get the David Goggins joke. All right, so here, I do have this question. So NLP stands for Neural Linguistic Programming.
Mhm.
Can you give us an explanation on that breakdown, right? What each part stands for?
100%. So I'm actually going to be reading directly here from my workbook, or my class book, whatever that I got from the coaching room. So actually, I do suggest studying with them if anyone's in Australia. They did it online while I was in India during COVID. They don't do online anymore, which I think is so sad because I feel like everyone should do this to be able to be 18. Everyone should do NLP prac. Yeah, I'm going to be quoting my workbook here. So when we talk about NLP, it is the neuro-linguistic programming. So neuro is really the voluntary and autonomic nervous system through which our experiences are processed by means of our five senses. So visual, auditory, kinesthetic, olfactory, and gustatory. So the neurology, the nervous system, the physical foundations for the abstracting of the nervous system that begins our mapping of the world. So it's our neurological mapping. So we map the world using the non-linguistic maps of the sensory system. So the five senses, right? And that's why a smell for one person isn't going to be the same trigger as a smell for another person, right? Like we have, and neuro-linguistic programming is just a communication model. And our body is communicating with the world through our senses, and our mind is communicating with our senses through the nervous system. And that's literally what the neuro and the neuro-linguistic programming is talking about. And so the mind body is a communication loop where the body sends information to the mind sends information to the body. The linguistic part is the symbolic mapping that we create about the territory. So the symbolic mapping is what I was talking about, like our relative truth is the symbolic mapping that we create about the territory, which is the actual universal third quadrant, you know, like fact, third person, what's actually happening. So it involves the higher cortical function, in the brain, which enables us to use symbols to create language and to map things out linguistically. This enables us to encode, order, and give meaning to our sensory representations using much more abstract categories. So this is like language, you know, words, sentences, mathematics, music, and non-propositional language, which is like poetry, stories, narratives, etc. So the linguistic part of it is it's what does a word mean to you, right? And it's really funny because when we start going into words and we realize that some word means something to me that it doesn't mean to you, that's when we come into the linguistics. And what kind of word is going to trigger you in a different way that it's going to trigger someone else, right? Like, for example, I was watching Sex in the City the other day on my thousands of hours of flights that I had. And there's, you know, one of the characters, Samantha, she's all like anti-relationship. And one of the guys called her a girlfriend once. And her reaction to that word was like, oh, no, oh. Whereas someone else, if someone says girlfriend, they're like, oh, wow, yay, oh. So that same word, but the meaning behind it for that particular person is completely different reaction than the meaning for someone else. So that's the linguistic, the nervous system reaction, right? It's not like that persona, that character didn't think, oh, what do I feel about the word girlfriend? No, it was an instant reaction, right? And that's where the neuro-linguistic comes in. And the programming is just simply the actual process of our patterns that we use to order and sequence our mapping. So programming generates our strategies for functioning and results in our skills, our abilities, our habits. And we develop programs for communicating, leading, parenting, working, relating, etc. So everything that we do is just actually the skill that we have. And this is like what Joe Dispenza says, right? Our personality is just our personal reality. So the neuro-linguistic programming is just understanding how you are taking in neutral information that is not good nor bad, that is just information, that is just factual, how you're taking that in through your senses and how you're making meaning of that and how you're feeding back that meaning to your body and to the world. It's literally a communication loop inside a communication loop. Does that make sense so far on the theory here? How are we feeling?
A little bit, yeah, because it reminds me of you know, Jordan Peterson talks about how we create stories to make sense of the world, and we make these archetypes, and mapping is like, I guess, another word for that. And we mentioned a little while ago about how our brain's a kind of a goal-seeking organism. So in order to, you know, hit a target, you have to have a map of how to get there, right? So the mapping of the world is kind of the stories that you were talking about, symbolic representations and I feel like religions try to do a good job of that, like an overarching story of how the world works and our place in it. And if you were to look at it factually, there's like probably scientific non like if you think about Hinduism, right? They have these gods with that are animals with like a bunch of heads and stuff like that. And a skeptical scientist guy would be like, well, that doesn't make any sense. That's clearly false because you know, that's not a real thing. But like it's that the truth isn't hidden in the actual factual data of that story. It's actually the symbolic truth of the story, which is probably a deeper truth than the actual factual truth, if that makes sense. And so I think people have a different maps of the world. I like that you brought that up because there's like, you know, Christianity, Buddhism, Hinduism, atheism, if you're on my side of the planet, you know, whatever. And I think what we were talking about a while ago was kind of the basis of truth and basic. I think that those are like the that's like the programming that dictates how you map out the world, I think, is like how you see truth and your way in it and how to determine reality from not reality. So I'm curious, like, are you a would you think of yourself as like a utilitarian, I think it's called, where like truth is whatever is most practical and useful, or do you believe that there are absolute truths out there that we can tangibly understand and know and they don't change and they're black and white? Or what do you feel like is the your basic like truth philosophy? Because I feel like that would you know shed a light into, I guess, the map, how we map things out is based on those like presuppositions of what truth is and how we determine, I guess, reality, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. I love how you bring that up and just the word presupposition. Personally, this is not directly with NLP. Personally, I believe in both of what you said, utilitarian and absolute truthism, because both exist simultaneously, right? Like it's it also from a Buddhist perspective and from, you know, the yogic perspective, which NLP a little bit less, doesn't really touch on this that much, but from these more esoteric, mystical, spiritual points of view, reality actually does not exist. It's kind of like, you know, we're living the simulation, right? Time doesn't really exist the way that we think time exists. Actually, NLP does touch on that. But my personal view of reality is that it's this really funky thing that I don't quite understand right now that's happening with light passing through vibrating molecules. Like I'm like super in the quantum field, right? So reality for me is something that's very like I don't like I'm looking outside here and I see the tree and I see the wall and I see this flower
Like
and I
it's
believe
static
it's
or
static, right? I believe this
you know.
that these things are there, but at the same time, I'm also understanding that that flower is only pink because of, you know, the way the light is going through it and the way everything is just light and we're all just light. Isn't that just cool? And so for me personally, my point of view of reality is very fluid. It's very spiritual. It's very esoteric. It's very like, you know, kind of everything goes and nothing really exists for real, kind of is my thing. But then we do live in this 3D, right? And that's kind of why in spirituality we talk about 3D, 5D, right? You know what I mean? We talk about these different dimensions because where we live right now, we do have the molecules that are vibrating at a denser, like a denser vibration that are hitting another denser vibration. Therefore, we have clapping, right? Like we do live in this reality. And so I think I want to come in and give like a really like a really tangible example to kind of explain all of this and kind of bring it in. What neurolinguistic programming is teaching us is that the meaning that we make, the symbolic significance that we give to things is from oftentimes from our programming, from our first 7 years, from the beliefs that we've been gifted by society, by our parents, that we actually had no say over, unless you get into spirituality and you were reincarnated, chose your family, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, technically, just the things that were like gifted to you are going to determine your beliefs, your values, you know, and your judgments, etc. So neurolinguistic programming, for example, a really, really, really good example is that have you ever heard or have you ever said, I need to work out?
Yes.
There you go. I'm sure anyone listening was like, yes. And so from an NLP standpoint, I need to work out depending on the context, 90% of the time, that's actually going to be an incorrect or a non-efficient strategy to be able to motivate yourself to work out. Why are you saying I need to work out? You have come down to the word need. You are using the strategy of the necessity pattern to communicate to yourself and to the world your necessity to work out. Now, the meaning of something being a necessity is for your survival. There are probably very few situations where your survival is directly dependent on you working out. So therefore, saying that is actually quite from kind of like a universal truth, it's not quite accurate, right? However, your relative truth is that you do not respond to society's norms of beauty and of achievement because you don't have a six pack. Therefore, you feel inferior. Therefore, you not having a six pack is symbolism of you not being as deserving, worthy, or valuable as someone else that does have a six pack. So now the six pack symbolizes your worth and your actual value as a human being. And so when you say, I need to work out, I need to have a six pack, then you're actually speaking to that relative truth of yours that you feel the need to be able to prove your worth through this six pack, because for you, this is the symbolism of someone that is worthy, someone that is beautiful, someone that will, receive these different experiences from life is through this. So saying I need to work out is really bringing in this relativeness of it's not true that you need to work out, but yes, maybe you do for, whatever it is that you want to put in. Now, if I was going to be coaching someone, if I had a client in front of me that said, well, I need to work out, I would bring them through a questioning process where I say, well, why do you need to? Well, because, if I don't, then I'm going to be fat or, whatever. And then I'm like, okay, so are you going to stop surviving? And then the person realizes, well, no, it's not that I'm not going to survive. Okay, so then do you need to or you want to? Well, no, I want to. And then the energy shifts right there, going from I need to work out to I want to work out. And the reason is because the needing is going to trigger your sympathetic nervous system. It's going to trigger your stress. It's going to trigger all that cortisol. And then probably if your goal is to lose weight, you're probably actually not going to lose that much weight because you're too cortisol freaking high. And then going and shifting into that want is also going to give you the option and is much more empowering because now you have the option, you have the choice, you have the power to do it or not. It's not a necessity. You're not going to die. You de-dramatized. You got out of your own freaking drama. You know what I mean? You pulled your head out of your ass, basically, right? And you're seeing truth as it is. The six pack does not represent your value. This is philosophical. This is for me, every single human being. If you are the most worst pedophile, rapist, murderer, or if you are a saint that has dedicated your life to saving animals and children, both of these people exactly worthy of love on the exact same level with absolutely no condition that will ever change that. And that's a philosophical belief. Now, therefore, if you have a six pack or you don't, you are exactly the same level of deserving of love. But the ignorance, the illusion, that relative truth that six pack will give you more love is what you are holding on to. And that map of the world is what's creating that pain inside of you, that suffering that you don't have a six pack, that's making you feel like you need to, that's making you stressed. And because you're so stressed and you don't love yourself because you don't have a six pack, then you're not motivated to go and work out because and these are the layers, and this is how neurolinguistic programming can really help us get clarity in this, and how the philosophical understanding of absolute truth that there is nothing that defines your worthiness versus the relative truth of when I go to the beach, I'm likely to get laid 20% more if I have a six pack or no, is also true. So this is this kind of wrapping it all together? Does this kind of, did this make sense?
Yeah, it's I like the analogy you just ended with there because it's almost like, you can, there's that famous story. I think Confucius said, he who believes he can and he who believes he can't, they're both right. And you can create whatever story you want, but there's conflicting stories that you're competing against in society. Everybody has their own story. So the narrative of, you can have whatever narrative you want, but when you go to the beach and people have their own narrative of I'm a, you know, six pack is what I want, and this is what, you know, whatever, you gotta confront that reality and deal with it. So it's interesting trying to like put on narratives for like for size almost, and like trying on different beliefs and like seeing how they interact with other people's beliefs and like existing in the same ecosystem, which I think this society is kind of dealing with right now, as we all have completely different stories of how the world should work and how you know, reality is and stuff like that. Um, yeah, I think I don't know. I think I don't know where I was gonna go with that. Do you have anything to say to that, Marco?
Well,
I just
I
totally
just
lost my
wanted to
train of
bring,
thought.
I just, so real quick, just a funny side note. Do you guys know how Bandler came up with the name neuro-linguistic programming? So I was listening.
Couldn't guess.
So, all right. So look, and this is straight from the documentary they did on him called Altered State. I'm halfway through. I started watching it this morning, right? Because I wanted to get, for me, it's important the background, right? I want to know about the person's history and how they came up with these things. Not that it's going to be like this judgment on it. For me, it's just interesting and entertaining. That's all, right? And so Bandler was driving one day when he was school studying, right? And he got pulled over by the cops. And one of the questions the cop asked, and he's like, "So what do you do for a living?" And he couldn't, in that moment, like explain it to him because it was very confusing. And he looked down at the car and he had three books on neurology, linguistics, and computer programming. And he's like, you know, I do this thing. It's called neuro linguistic programming. So that's how he came up with that, right? Which I think is super cool. Um, so I wanted actually to, number one, this is the first NLP book right here, The Structure of Magic, Part One. And this was written back
Nice.
in the 70s, right? And Metha Singleton bought this. Her phone number is still there. I'm gonna text it just to see if it's even functional, if she's even alive. Probably not, dude. I mean, we're talking like 50 years ago, right? And it's really interesting that, you know, of course, it's very 70s writing. I know they've got this Merlin type guy right there, right? It's super cool. The structure of magic. Okay. Now, one of the biggest proponents for NLP, as we all know, is this guy, Tony Robbins, right? And then when it comes to the sales game, one of the other biggest proponents is one of his top guys back in the day, Eli Wild, right? And he's really big on that. And you know, with my background coming from philosophy as well, I'm just like showing and telling all this crap that I have on my desk. Socrates, right, and the Socratic method. And it's about getting, you know, the Socratic method is about getting to the truth through dialogue. Um, but a lot of times people misconstrue or misunderstand the dialogues that Plato wrote as, you know, how to win arguments. And it's like, actually, no, it's about how to what's the word, self-evaluate yourself, do an audit on your own belief system through dialogue. Like, do you really believe your shit? Let's break it down. Why do you believe this, and what's the definition that you're using? And give me this example, and we're going to work it out till you get to a place where it's like it starts falling apart because it's not true, or it's not congruent, or this and that, or it's not serving you. And then as I was studying more and more about NLP, that's when I was thinking to myself, I was like, is there a connection between, and I think there are similarities between the Socratic method and NLP. Because from what I was, you know, learning from the documentary, ultimately it's also this tool that you can use on yourself to get clear on some shit and to, deconstruct some shit and do away some shit. What I'm curious about, see if, Natasha, if you got some insight on it. Why do so many salespeople want to employ this as a tool in their sales toolkit, and how? Like, what's one
Mhm.
example? I'm just curious about that.
Right. Yeah, no, I love that you're bringing this up because NLP has been one of the number one things that has helped me, I think, be so successful as a salesperson, because the basic foundation of NLP, and actually one of the presuppositions, because NLP does have the presuppositions, um, there's so many of these presuppositions that actually go into it, but I think that the main one is that the map is not the territory. The map is but a symbolic representation of the territory, just like we talked about with the symbolism of the six pack, right? So if you as a salesperson, you can understand what the person, what that prospect, what that lead is saying to you through the symbolic lens of their map of the world and not yours, when you can become an empty slate and you can have a conversation with someone and you can communicate with them to understand, not bringing in your map of the world, not bringing in your meaning making, not bringing in the things that are important to you, not projecting your reality onto them, because that's what most people are doing in conversations in everyday life, in sales. And that's what a lot of therapists are doing. That's what a lot of people are doing in their relationships. Stop freaking projecting your reality onto people, become a clean slate and try to understand their reality and what their symbolism is. And that will make you 80% better in your sales, probably instantly. Because when someone says, I want to be free, I want to quit my 9-to-5 job, I want to feel comfortable in my body, and you don't speak to that, and you just assume that when they say free, it means the same thing as you. When they say comfortable in their body, it means the same thing as you. You're going to be talking to them about what you think being comfortable in your body means. And it's different than them. So now you guys are having two different conversations. So it's just words hitting words. It's not even actually what's going on. If you as a salesperson, if someone says, I want to be free, well, what does that look like to you? What does it mean for you to be free? Well, for me, because for me, being free means that I can get in a plane anywhere and I can go wherever I want. For that person, being free means that they can go to the grocery store and buy their favorite food and feed their 12 kids. That's what's freedom for them, right? Totally two different things. I want to know what that freedom is for them, right? And when it comes to really understanding the core motivation, assuming that they're motivated by, the freedom versus them being motivated by the connection that they can have. Now there's going to be two different conversations. So if I dig and I'm actually like a blank piece of paper, like I don't understand what freedom means. Like I'm from another planet. When you say freedom, it's a foreign word to me. What do you mean freedom? Then that person is going to talk and we're going to realize it's actually not freedom. It's them being able to spend time with their children. So now that whole conversation just got a layer deeper because now we really got to what actually matters to them, and that's feeling that connection. So that's where NLP can be really, really useful. On like the map is not the territory, but there are other concepts as well, such as framing. Where there's a frame, there's a game, and where there's a game, there's a frame, and it's about the inner game of our frames, and whoever holds the frame holds the game. That's what we say.
Right.
So, yeah, as a salesperson, are you holding the frame? The frame of this conversation is, you know what I mean? Like a frame is a belief, and you cannot not be thinking. You cannot not be framing unless you're in like a really deep like transcendental meditation. But anyway, as we are functioning in the 3D world, there's always a frame. So whoever sets the frame sets the game. And so as a salesperson, are you setting your frame? Are you maintaining your frame? Are you holding that frame? Are you congruent with that frame? Right? And that's something huge. A lot of people don't know how to even do that in a conversation.
Yeah.
So these are just some basic principles of NLP. No, I haven't even gotten into how the questioning process of NLP is so, so, so beautiful. The reflective questionings, how precise they are and how deep they can bring someone. So just like a little bit about NLP and sales.
Let's jump into that. Can you give us some examples?
Yeah. So reflective questioning is it, this is where a lot of salespeople have a hard time. We can't give anyone answers because we don't know. And so you can guide the conversation, ask questions for someone to figure things out on their own. But as long as you have an agenda of what you think the answer should be, you're going to fuck it up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. And so that's where the two contradictory truths that we go on to a phone call, we're salespeople and our goal is to sell. But actually, whenever we get on a phone call, we don't have an agenda and we're just there to, have a conversation with someone and support them in their, decision-making process. These are two contradictory truths that coexist at the same time. I'm not here to sell, but I'm here to actually sell. And so when you're actually in the conversation, you want to use questioning where you're not coming from a space where you are assuming that this is what the person wants. You're asking them questions for them to get there. So it's I don't know if we want to do like almost like a role play on it, but it's like it's bringing someone to their highest intention, for example, is like a strategy.
Let's do a role play.
Okay, awesome. All right. Who's gonna be the victim? You or Wesley?
Wesley,
I'll be the victim, I guess. That's the story of my life. My frame has been victim, so we'll go with it. I'm just kidding.
All right. So all right, so what are we doing? What do I got here? Are we like biz ops? Are we selling you affiliate marketing? What are we doing?
Yeah, sure. Let's do a affiliate marketing biz op, I guess. Do I
All
have
right,
to act like a certain type of person or like
not at all. Not at
okay.
all. No, just be yourself or be an invented person. It doesn't matter. Okay.
You guys want me to turn off my camera?
Uh yeah. Do you have your payment link ready? Like just in
Yeah,
case.
exactly. Just letting you know that if it doesn't work, it's because you didn't put effort into it.
Yay. Now I feel like a piece of shit.
Let's gaslight them.
You know, right? Gaslighting is literally NLP gone wrong.
That's what
So
I was
like,
gonna say actually. That was a follow-up question because I know that there's people that abuse this power, but
oh, for sure.
anyways.
Okay, so let's say that Wesley, we're just gonna jump here and you've just expressed to me that you want to be able to make $10,000 a month.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Natasha, my goal is within the next year I want to be able to, make 6 figures. So 10K a month would be awesome.
Nice. Okay, cool. So tell me more about this 10K a month, these 6 figures. What's important to you about reaching those 6 figures?
Well, I actually don't care about the money, but in my mind, I don't believe that it's possible to hit that. I've seen guys do it. I've tried to do it unsuccessfully. So if I can hit that, I feel like it would challenge my paradigm. I feel like it would prove to me that it's possible, and I would change the way that I think about myself and how far I can go.
Okay, interesting. So what's really important for you is you challenging your own paradigm.
Yeah, that's probably the most important goal right now is to challenge my paradigm,
And what's
prove
important
myself
about
wrong.
paradigm?
Um, because I feel like the life that I'm living right now isn't ideal and I don't have a compelling vision of the future. And so if I can challenge that paradigm, I feel like I could break the shell that is this bubble, that this cloud that looms over me, that life isn't compelling and whatever, and maybe I can create a new compelling version of my vision of my future. And I've tried to think about that compelling vision. I can't conjure up a compelling vision, but the idea of at least breaking that shell makes me feel like there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
Okay, so going beyond your limits, breaking that paradigm, the importance and the significance for that for you is being able to find a way to have a completely different relationship with your life.
Yeah, pretty much.
And what's significant to you about being able to relate differently with your life?
um well, then I could live a life of meaning and stop being miserable and find fulfillment, find purpose, find happiness. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Okay. So the value and the benefit that you're hoping to get out of this 10K a month is being able to find meaning and find purpose within your life.
Yeah, yeah, I would say so. Like it's probably not gonna, yeah, yeah, that's the journey. That's a lighthouse at least for me to aim toward that would at least give me a sense of direction toward that goal.
And is there something, if anything, more important to you than finding this purpose and this meaning in your life?
Well, the meaning and purpose would, I'm hoping that it would allow me to unlock like a self-respect again, like a love for myself, which I don't have. So I want to be able to love myself someday, and but the my current paradigm doesn't fit that narrative at all. So if I can challenge that, break that mold, and create a different version of my life by that I actually am proud of and I actually love myself, then I feel like everything would change because I'd be at peace, you know. I'd be at peace, and yeah, I guess I'm just looking for peace.
Okay, wow. Yeah. So is there anything more in life that you want than this piece that you're speaking of right now?
Mm, well, I would say like self-love and acceptance, but it gives me the peace. So maybe it's like a loop. I don't know. Maybe it's the same thing. So yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
probably not.
Yeah. And I mean, this could change over time, right? But for right now, what's really important for you is that self-love, that peace, that relationship that you have with yourself. And that's really the journey you want to be on. So do you believe that this journey of entrepreneurship, where you come in and you're committed to this affiliate marketing, and you're committed to the process of learning how to run this business and being an entrepreneur, do you believe that this is the path that is most aligned with you finding this self-respect, this self-love, and this peace?
Um, well, I think that it's the best vehicle I can find to get me to that. I'm hoping that that's the case. I'm hoping that it's not a scam or anything like that, but I think it's one of the best vehicles to get me there from what I know.
Right. So let me tell you more about Tupperware. No.
Sweet.
So, yeah, do you have any questions or any feedback about that? It was just kind of like a quick example.
No, so and I was actually being honest. I've talked about my journey and experience and what got me into sales, and it was to challenge my paradigm and everything. So I could speak, I was speaking the truth there. So I wanted to see if I could actually feel. And I've been on sales calls with guys that use the, digging intent like process of just kind of asking deeper questions. And it comes off the wrong way, but the way you did it made it feel like you actually cared about what I was saying. You weren't judging, you were just trying to understand like, yeah, I didn't feel judgment is basically the word that I would use there. I didn't sense an intention behind what you were doing, right? A negative intention. And I think that that's one of the issues with or maybe where this goes wrong is like, dealing with sophisticated buyers or people that have been exposed to this kind of line of questioning. Like how do you deliver it in a way that like doesn't come off as like judgmental, because I don't even know if I can tell the difference other than I just have that intention and I'm hoping that the person perceives me that way.
Wesley, should we just do a quick demo of what you're talking about? Can I be the salesperson and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
are you ready? Okay.
No,
All right.
you be the dick and I'll be the normal
Yeah,
guy
yeah,
because I'm
yeah,
sure
yeah.
you have a better.
Yeah, yeah. Hold on. Do I have any? No, we're gonna keep going. All right. Are you ready? So, Wesley, what brings you to the call?
Yeah. By the way, can you turn your camera on? Because I can't tell if you're like,
Oh, wait, hold on, wait. Yeah, hey, Wesley, how's it going? So what brings you on the call today, man?
yeah. Well, I don't know if this is a
Yeah, gotcha.
telemarketer
Yeah, yeah,
hotline
totally.
or
So do you got like
okay.
10 grand to invest in this product?
Uh, that's
All
like
right,
all
I'm
my
gonna take that as a
savings.
yes, man. Yeah, that sounds pretty positive, don't you think?
Nice. All right.
Yeah.
hang up. Obviously, that's an accelerated version, but
I was like, that's not even bad questioning. That's just
Wait, here we go. Here we go. Here we go. And, does that make you feel, you know, personally?
but that's the weird thing is like it's the same. It's almost like the same questions, but it's like actually I don't think it is because I think you allowed if I were to self-analyze, I think you allowed space for me to explain what I meant, and then you wanted to understand the meaning of what that meant versus the typical sales guy, they're just waiting for you to stop talking so that they can say, okay, and how does that impact you? Because I'm trying to get you to understand that you're a piece of shit and I need you to make a change and I need to bridge this gap. So, but it's like a very subtle difference. And I think the only way that you can tell is just by your intention, which I think we've probably all felt privy to that. There's probably been times where we all get on a call desperate. We're like, all right, we got to make this sale. Sales manager's on my ass. I got to get to the goal. These prospects have been treating me bad. I had a bad day. All right, why is that important? What is that? Whatever. And then it's just like you come off as that guy.
And to that point,
Go
I
ahead.
think to that point though, that that's a consequence of a lack of maturity in the game. And what I mean by that is this: I'm not talking about, our chronological or biological ages. I'm just talking about just time in and not now. Granted, some folks haven't grown out of that, unfortunately, but then others have. Like, Wesley and I, and just where we started in our first offer, lots of high pressure, the fulfillment
Yeah, yeah,
sucked.
yeah.
We didn't. It was one of those things where it was just like, oh well, shit. Sales manager says do it this way. Fuck, all right. We're gonna make some money, okay. And then it's like lesson learned. Some really. I'm not even gonna say. I was gonna say some really bad experiences came out of that, and here's the reframe: they ended up being good experiences.
yeah.
Because right, it's always going back to that. It's just like, okay, what good, what diamonds can I extract from that shit?
Mhm.
Right.
And
Um,
that's how we learn. And that's kind of what NLP also like gifts us. It's really the meaning that we give to a situation. And that's going to impact how we feel about it. Because our emotions, according to NLP, the emotions only exist in the gap between our map and reality. The bigger the gap, the bigger the emotions. The more that we are in union, that we are yoga with absolute truth, with the neutrality of everything, without making meaning, and we are just with what is, we are observing, we are witnessing, then there is no need for emotion, there is no space for emotion, all energy can just flow through us. And so, and yeah, and that's where it becomes really interesting and philosophical. And that's why I think also, like Wesley, like you said, the way I do it is when I'm asking you those questions, I'm literally curious. I literally wipe myself blank and I'm literally like, what does this guy mean? Right? Like what is actually happening? And I just kind of like go into this like scientist mode where I'm like, okay, what does this mean? You know what I mean? Like, ooh, like, okay, okay, something new here. We've got like a whole new conversation every single time. And it is a genuine curiosity and it's a genuine care and it's a genuine wanting to understand. And then there's also some tricks. I don't know if you noticed, but when I asked, what in this exercise, you want to get to the point where the person's looping. So when we started looping at the end, I knew that we were at that point. There was nothing more important to you than the self-love, the peace, because you kind of repeated that. So when you're at that point where you're
Yeah.
looping, then you've that highest intention. But before that, I asked you, is there anything, if anything, that's more important, that's more significant, whatever. And so because I added that, is there anything, if anything, that right there, that language really left it open. And if you're someone that mismatches, because some people will always mismatch, some people will match. A lot of people mismatch, especially people that have like more of that, like entrepreneur, and I want to get out of my job. They're going to be mismatchers. You say white, they say black. You say black, they say white, right? And so because I asked the question that way, is there anything, if anything, and then now your brain, if you're a mismatcher, goes, oh, well, there's definitely something. Because now I've brought that doubt that there's nothing. So now your brain goes, oh, there's something. So that little trick, that little language trick there helped us go one step deeper. right? So that's where NLP comes in the questioning process as well. And it also leaves that, it leaves that genuine, I don't know, I'm not here to impose. So like, what's important to you about that? So like, what's significant about that? What's important to you? That kind of, the same questions, that kind of attitude, you're like, well, nothing, like this is the most important thing, right? You close off. That kind of language and that kind of energy of genuine curiosity opens up the conversation on a whole
Yeah.
different level.
It's the difference between being interrogated and having a conversation, right? Having a facilitatory conversation.
Yeah,
And
100%.
And you hit the nail on the head by saying wanting to understand, which Marco and I closed up a episode on empathy, which that's basically like the core definition of empathy, is like trying to understand, not just like feeling bad for the person, but actually trying to like step into their shoes and perceive life the way that they perceive it, which ironically is what you're talking about with NLP, is trying to understand how they symbolize stuff and how they, their story of the world. And my story of the world has changed many times. Like I've had a version of reality that just completely 180s, and now it's like, oh shit. And then you get those moments of humility where you're like, oh, okay. Like I was wrong to judge those type of people or whatever, because I had no idea. Again, I bring this up so much, but I think it's a great example. Jesus, I'm not a Christian or whatever, but they were like torturing him and spitting in his face and whipping him and stuff. And he had every right to be angry, and he was innocent. And he says, forgive them, God. They don't know what they're doing. And it's like speaking to that ignorance, like he that level of love and that level of like bedrock empathy, where it's like at the most extreme contrasting example, where he's being an innocent man is being tortured, that symbology, right? And he's like, forgive them, they don't even know what they're doing. It's like, wow, can I achieve that level of understanding and empathy for people? And Mother Teresa, another quote that I always talk about, she used to say, I got this from Eli Wild too. All communication is a loving response or a cry for help. So instead of perceiving the world as like people are trying to hate you, it's like they're either giving you a loving response, or if it's something that's negative in your perception of reality, they're actually crying for help. Like, I'm insecure, or I feel lonely, or I feel offended by what you just said, or whatever. So yeah, hope that added to the conversation a little bit.
Well, and what's interesting about what you just said about communication and NLP, we say that the quality of the communication is defined by the response that you get, not by your intention. So what you've communicated, what you were trying to communicate doesn't matter. What matters is what was understood. Yeah. And that's really interesting, because it gives you back a certain sense of responsibility as the communicator, that it's like, oh, well, I didn't mean it that way. It's not my fault that you're offended by it. I didn't mean it that way. Well, it's your responsibility because you initiated a communication, right? So it's really interesting when we look at communication and NLP as a communication model. And like you said, either it's a cry for help or love, because I think that even if that's very black and white, it could be very true at one way, because if it's not love, then it's everything else. And if it's not love, it's not love, right? And we're just trying to get to our love. And philosophically speaking, some might believe that we are just every single moment existing, hoping to reach that unconditional love. And with the skills and abilities and habits and programming that we have available to us at this exact moment, we're doing our best to achieve that love, to experience that. So yeah, I think that's quite accurate.
I think that's a really good place to to wrap the show up with that. Um, we already hit the hour, so I think I want to leave people with that final thought from Natassa. Um, Normally, what we do, Wesley and I, we do some takeaways as far as what we learned from the episode. Um, there's a lot to unpack here. And so I'm just going to leave it at that for just on my end. And I just want to say thank you for coming on today and sharing your knowledge with us and your wisdom. And just where can people find you on socials? Right. You also have this killer audiobook, The Millionaire Hippie that you wrote. No, it's not called it's called your audiobook. What's it called again, please?
From a fire under your ass to a fire in your heart.
Thank you. Yeah, which I think the title is amazing. I gave it a listen about 2 months ago, folks, and then definitely check it out. There's a lot of great wisdom there as well. Yeah, so I mean, we'll share your link on the YouTube channel, and then also when we post it up on Facebook. And do you have a website or anything like that right now?
I've got the millionairehippie.com/book if you want to download the audiobook there. And I even, from my personal beliefs, you have the option to put in your email so that, we can be in contact, or you can just download the book without even putting your email in. So, yeah, that's kind of like my main, site right now, but mostly on Facebook. You can find me there and hit me up, any questions, anything like that. I'm open to just conversations, networking. I also do coaching. So yeah, available at everyone's different needs.
Awesome. Wesley, any takeaways for you, brother?
Just reflect, I don't know. It's more of like internal takeaways.
I know, right?
Don't have judgment, seek to understand. Curiosity is king. And your version of the world isn't absolute, doesn't have to be absolute. A lot of people, I briefly mentioned this on one of our last podcasts. It might have been the mental health one, but with JD, but a lot of times our problems, we think that we have to justify living in the story that we created for ourselves instead of just trying to change the story and reboot the story, So I think that's really important too, is to not just accept the rules of the game, but just change the game.
Yeah. Well done.
Mm.
Ladies and gentlemen, that has been another episode, a great episode of The Process, where we get real, raw, and grounded. Thank you for joining us. Enjoy this episode wherever in the world and whatever time of day you see it. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Let your grandma know, because she likes this kind of stuff. All right, guys. Thank you so much.